On the evening of August 20th, 1989, Jose and Kitty Menendez were brutally murdered by their sons Lyle and Erik Menendez while watching television in the study of their Beverly Hills mansion. Jose Enrique Menendez was born in Havana, Cuba on May 6, 1944. At the age of 16, he moved to the United States shortly after the end of the Cuban Revolution. Jose married Kitty, a beauty queen he met in college in 1963. The couple's first son, Joseph Lyle, who used his middle name, was born in New York City on January 10, 1968. After Lyle was born, Kitty quit her teaching job and the family moved to New Jersey, and Eric Galen was born in Gloucester Township on November 27, 1970. The Menendez family seemed to be the perfect model of the American dream, at least by the standards of the 1980s. After managing the U.S. operations of the car rental company Hertz, Jose was head of RCA Records in the early 80s and was involved in signing bands like Duran Duran, the Eurythmics, and Menudo. The Menendez family, along with sons Lyle and Erik, moved from Princeton, New Jersey to Los Angeles just a few years before the murders so Jose could get a job in the film industry. The house where Jose and Kitty were murdered was located on one of the most exclusive blocks in Beverly Hills, where Michael Jackson and Elton John had previously lived. In 1988, Erik and his high school best friend Craig wrote a movie about a rich young man who kills his family for money. Kitty reportedly wrote the screenplay. It was never allowed to be used as evidence in later cases, but it is an important reference point. Lyle had been suspended from Princeton for plagiarism and had returned to his home in California. During this time, the two brothers committed two major burglaries, which were not trivial, involving money taken from safes in neighbors' homes, property, and some serious jewelry worth around $100,000. One of Erik's friends had found the combination to a friend's father's safe and participated in the first robbery. That friend, who was disqualified from the second robbery, reported them. Jose decided that Erik, who was a minor at the time, would take the blame for both boys. In an agreement made by his lawyers, Erik received probation and mandatory counseling. Erik then began seeing Dr. Jerome Oziel, and Erik signed a confidentiality waiver so that Oziel could share everything he learned with Jose and Kitty. On the evening of August 20th, 1989, Jose and Kitty were watching television in the study of their Beverly Hills mansion when Lyle and Erik entered the study with Mossberg 12-gauge shotguns. Jose was shot 6 times, including one fatal shot to the back of the head. Kitty was shot a total of 10 times. She was lying on the ground, slowly crawling and crying before the fatal shot hit her cheeks. Lyle ran to his car to reload before firing the fatal shot into his face. Immediately after the murders, both brothers stayed at home, waiting for the police to intervene due to the noise of the gunshots. When police arrived, the brothers told them that the murders occurred while they were at a movie theater to watch Batman and attend the Taste of LA festival at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. Police did not ask the brothers for a gunpowder trace test, which would have shown whether they had recently fired a firearm. In the months following the murders, none of the Menendez brothers behaved like the young men who had recently found their parents dead at the scene of a brutal, bloody murder. Instead, they behaved like two men who had just won the lottery. Jose was worth $14 million when he died, and within 6 months, the brothers had spent an estimated $700,000 of his fortune. In the early stages of the investigation, police tried to limit their search to suspects who had motives for killing Jose and Kitty, and also searched for possible gang leads. As the investigation continued, they began to suspect that the brothers were the most likely perpetrators because of their obvious financial motives and excessive spending after the murders. After the murders, Dr. Oziel reached out to his former patient Erik, and the younger Menendez began counseling his brother once again. Soon, Erik confessed to killing his parents. Oziel confided in Judalon Smith, with whom he was having an extramarital affair. She would eventually play a major role in the case. The therapy sessions continued, and Oziel eventually got both Erik and Lyle on the record and confessed to the murders. Erik said they did it to put their mother out of her misery, while Lyle made it clear that they were both complicit in the crime. Smith and Oziel had an on and off relationship. Oziel claimed Oziel was controlling and abusive, and after he allegedly assaulted her, Smith contacted Beverly police to explain that she had confessed to the murder of the Menendez brothers' parents. Lyle was arrested on March 8, 1990. Erik, who was in Israel at the time for a tennis tournament, flew to Miami, then to Los Angeles, and surrendered to police on March 11th. It took 2 years, with lawsuits and appeals going back and forth between the prosecution and the Menendez lawyers. to determine whether the tapes containing the confessions were covered by the doctor-patient privilege or admissible as evidence in court. Finally, the California Supreme Court ruled that 2 of the 3 tapes, including the one on which Lyle pleaded guilty, were eligible for use in the case. Trials began in 1993 with separate juries for each brother. In the courtroom, prosecutors argued that the Menendez brothers were after their inheritance, but Lyle and Erik said they killed in self-defense. They said their father not only had high expectations and was emotionally abusive, they claimed Jose had abused them for years. When Lyle was 6 to 8 years old and Erik was 6 to 18 years old, with graphic depictions that shocked the nation and divided friends and family members, Erik's attorney, Leslie Abramson, became a star during the trial, working alongside Lyle's attorney, Gerald Chaleff, who argued that the pair were defending themselves after growing up in such a violent and traumatizing home. Giving detailed testimony about his father's alleged behavior, Lyle also said that a few days before the murders he confronted Jose about sexually assaulting Erik and that he perceived his father's angry response as a death threat. "I told my mom to tell my dad to leave me alone. He keeps touching me," Lyle said during the trial. "She told me to stop, that I was exaggerating and that my dad should punish me if I did something wrong." Lyle also argued that Kitty's mental health deteriorated and that she later joined in the abuse, making him watch her undress and putting her face in the sheets when she wet the bed. Defense witnesses confirmed that the brothers' upbringing was hardly ideal. Charles Wadlington, Lyle and Erik's tennis coach for 5 years, claimed that Jose forced them to train in the rain, in cold weather, on vacations, and even when they were sick. Both resulted in hung juries that could not agree on whether Lyle and Erik were guilty of murder or their own self-defense. It was immediately announced that they would be retried together. The second trial was slightly less publicized, in part because Judge Stanley Weisberg did not allow cameras in the courtroom. Both brothers were eventually found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole during the penalty phase of the trial. The jury noted that the molestation defense was not a factor in their deliberations, but decided not to impose the death penalty because neither brother had a prior criminal record or history of violence. However, unlike juries in previous trials, the jury in the penalty phase rejected the defense theory that the brothers killed their parents out of fear and believed they committed the murders to inherit their father's fortune. Lyle, 28, and Erik, 26, were sentenced to life in prison. Found guilty after nearly 7 years, 3 trials, and thousands of hours of TV coverage, the brothers have repeatedly appealed their convictions since their convictions. They were in separate prisons until February 2018, when Lyle was moved from Mule Creek State Prison to the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, where Erik was housed. They were reunited for the first time in April 2018. During their incarceration, they both married. In 2023, they filed a motion for a new trial based on new evidence. Roy Rosselló, a member of the boy band Menudo, claimed that Jose Menendez assaulted him as a teenager. Lyle is now 56 years old and Erik is 53. Now, more than 30 years later, their story will be told in Netflix's Monsters, which premiered on September 19th. The Lyle and Erik Menendez story, which premiered on September 19th, while they are still behind bars.